Welcome back to Paranormal Stories and Coffee. I'm so glad you're here. Every place has its stories. Stories whispered around campfires, passed down through generations, or quietly shared by the people who call these places home. Tonight, our journey takes us to the Sunshine State, Florida, a place known for beautiful beaches, crystal clear springs, and endless sunshine. But beneath the Spanish moss, deep within the Everglades, and along lonely roads after dark, another Florida begins to emerge. The stories you're about to hear are inspired by real legends, local folklore, and historical accounts from across the state. Like all legends, the details may change depending on who's telling the story, but each one has become part of Florida's history. So pour yourself a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let's discover what waits in Florida after dark. Long before Florida became known for theme parks and beaches, the Seminole and Miccosukee people spoke of a powerful creature that moved silently through the swamps. Today, most people know it by another name, the skunk ape. The Everglades are unlike anywhere else in America. During the day, sunlight dances across endless rivers of grass. White egrets glide over the marsh. Alligators drift silently through black water. It feels untouched, ancient. But once the sun begins to disappear, everything changes. The birds stop calling, the frogs grow strangely quiet. Even the wind seems to slow. Local guides often say, "The Everglades have two personalities. One belongs to the day, the other belongs to the night." The story was shared by a wildlife photographer who had spent years documenting Florida's wetlands. He wasn't looking for monsters, he was looking for Florida panthers. Just before sunset, he anchored his small airboat beside a cluster of towering cypress trees. The smell of mud, fresh water, and decaying vegetation filled the humid air, completely normal for the Everglades. He set up his camera and waited. Hours passed. Nothing. Then the smell changed. Not gradually, instantly. It hit him like a wall. Rotting eggs, wet dog, decaying vegetation, and something almost impossible to describe. A smell so powerful his eyes began watering. Years later, he would say, "I've worked around dead animals. I've smelled gators. I've smelled swamp water in the middle of summer. Nothing has ever smelled like that." That overwhelming odor is one of the most consistent details reported in skunk ape sightings. He packed his camera. The sun had almost disappeared. He decided it was time to head back. As he walked along the narrow trail, he heard something. Splash! Behind him. Heavy. Not an alligator, not a bird. Another splash. Then another. Whatever it was stayed hidden behind the sawgrass, never rushing, never falling behind, always keeping the same distance. Every time he stopped, the splashing stopped. Every time he walked, it walked too. Finally, he reached a small patch of soft mud. He turned around. Nothing. The smell lingered, but the swamp looked empty. Then he looked down. Pressed into the mud were enormous footprints, each one much larger than his own boot. 4 thick toes, no claw marks. They crossed the trail and disappeared into water that was too deep for him to follow. The last rays of sunlight disappeared. The swamp became black. He clicked on his flashlight. Nothing. Then, a movement. Far ahead. 2 amber-colored eyes, low, watching him, not blinking. He lifted his camera. The moment the flash fired, the eyes were gone. Then, from somewhere deep in the darkness came a sound. Not a roar, not a scream, more like a deep, guttural exhale. The kind of sound that vibrated through the trees. He never saw the creature, only the eyes, the smell, and the footprints. The next morning, he returned with 2 park employees. The footprints were gone. The trail looked untouched. Only one thing remained: that smell, faint, still drifting through the trees. Years later, when asked if he believed he had encountered the skunk ape, he simply answered, "I don't know what followed me that night, but whatever it was, it knew exactly where I was." Sometimes, the first sign you're not alone isn't what you see, it's what you smell. Our next stop takes us to Jackson County, Florida, where an old steel bridge crosses the Chipola River. During the day, it's peaceful, quiet, beautiful. But once the fog begins to rise from the water, many locals refuse to cross it alone. Bellamy Bridge sits surrounded by towering oak trees draped in Spanish moss. The Chipola River flows quietly beneath it. By daylight, it's one of the prettiest places in North Florida. Birds sing overhead, sunlight filters through the moss, the river sparkles. Nothing about it feels frightening, which is exactly why so many people are caught off guard when night falls. As darkness settles over the bridge, the forest becomes strangely still. The river seems quieter. Even the air feels heavier. Old-timers in the area have a saying: "If the fog reaches the bridge, don't stay long." The story was shared by a landscape photographer hoping to capture long-exposure photos of the bridge under the full moon. He arrived just before sunset, set up his tripod, waited patiently for darkness. As the moon rose, a thin layer of fog slowly drifted across the river. Perfect conditions for photography. He smiled. This was exactly the shot he'd been hoping for. As he adjusted his camera, he noticed movement near the opposite end of the bridge. A woman, long white dress, standing perfectly still, her back facing him. He assumed she was another photographer. He called out politely, "Excuse me?" No answer. She never turned around. He walked a little closer, still nothing. The only sound was the river beneath the bridge. Then, the woman slowly began walking, not hurried, almost gliding toward the far end of the bridge. The fog thickened. Within moments, the far end of the bridge disappeared. The photographer kept walking, trying not to lose sight of her. Every few seconds, he caught another glimpse of white through the fog. Then, nothing. She was gone. He reached the exact spot where she'd disappeared. There was nowhere she could have gone. Dense woods surrounded both sides. The bridge stretched straight behind him. No footsteps, no voices, just silence. He packed up his equipment and drove home. The next morning, he loaded the photos onto his computer. Most were exactly what he expected: the bridge, the moon, the fog. Then he opened the final photograph. Standing in the middle of the bridge was the woman, looking directly at the camera. He froze. He remembered she had never turned around, not once. He returned to Bellamy Bridge a week later, this time during the day. He asked a local man if he'd ever heard stories about the bridge. The old man smiled, almost knowingly, then quietly asked, "Did you see Elizabeth in her white dress?" The photographer felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He had never told anyone. She was wearing white. The legend of Bellamy Bridge has been part of Florida folklore since the 1800s. While historians debate the details of Elizabeth Bellamy's death, visitors continue reporting unexplained sightings near the bridge. Some describe a woman in white. Others simply say they never feel completely alone while crossing after dark. Some bridges connect 2 places. Others seem to connect 2 worlds. Our next stop takes us to America's oldest city, St. Augustine, Florida. Millions visit each year to climb the lighthouse. Most leave with photographs. A few leave with stories. Standing more than 160 feet above the coastline, the St. Augustine Lighthouse has watched over sailors for nearly 150 years. During the day, families climb its 219 steps. Children laugh. Tourists admire the ocean views stretching for miles. It feels warm, historic, peaceful. But when darkness falls, the lighthouse becomes something else entirely. Its great beam slowly sweeps across the Atlantic, again and again, lighting the darkness for everyone except those who are no longer alive. The story came from a volunteer who helped close the Lighthouse Museum each evening. Most nights followed the same routine. Visitors left, lights were turned off, doors were locked, one final walkthrough. Simple routine. One evening, as she reached the bottom of the tower, she heard laughter. Children. She smiled. Someone must have stayed behind. She began climbing the spiral staircase. The laughter echoed above her, soft, playful, as if children were running in circles. She called out, "The lighthouse is closed!" No answer, only more laughter. Then, tiny footsteps running overhead. She climbed faster. The higher she went, the quieter it became, until silence. Halfway up the tower, she rounded a corner. Standing several steps above her was a little girl, no older than 10. She wore a pale blue dress, long brown hair. One hand rested lightly on the railing. The volunteer smiled. "Sweetheart, where are your parents?" The little girl never answered. She simply smiled, then continued climbing, slowly. One step, then another. The volunteer followed, only a few seconds behind. When she reached the top, the observation deck was empty. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to go, only the ocean and the wind. Shaken, she started back down. As she reached the museum, she heard something else. A music box, playing somewhere inside the building. Soft, delicate, almost like a lullaby. She followed the sound into one of the exhibits. The room was empty. The music suddenly stopped. The silence felt heavy. The next morning, she told another volunteer what had happened. The older man listened quietly, then walked over to an old display case. Inside was a faded black and white photograph. 3 young girls, standing together. He pointed to one of them. "Was that the little girl you saw?" She felt the color drain from her face. The dress, the smile, the hair. It was her. The tragic deaths of the girls during the lighthouse's construction are part of the documented history of St. Augustine. Over the years, visitors, staff, and paranormal investigators have reported hearing children's laughter, footsteps, and seeing young girls inside the lighthouse. Whether those experiences are paranormal or coincidence, the stories continue to this day. Some lighthouses guide the living. Perhaps others still watch over those who never left. Our 4th stop takes us to a quiet cemetery near one of Florida's most unusual communities, Cassadaga. For generations, people have traveled here seeking mediums, spiritualists, and answers about what might exist beyond death. But just outside the community lies a cemetery, and inside that cemetery sits an old brick bench. Locals know it by another name, the Devil's Chair. The stories surrounding the chair vary. One says that if you sit there around midnight, you may discover that you're no longer sitting alone. Another tradition involves leaving an unopened beer on the chair overnight. According to the legend, by morning, the beer will be gone. Of course, eventually someone decides they need to find out for themselves. Our telling begins with 3 friends driving toward Cassadaga late one October evening. They've heard the stories. They don't believe them. That's precisely why they're going. One of them has brought a flashlight. Another has brought his phone to record everything. And the third has brought a single, unopened beer. Not because he believes the legend, because he thinks it'll make the video funnier. As they approach the cemetery, their joking begins to fade. There are no dramatic thunderclouds, no strange figures wandering between the graves, no glowing eyes, just an old Florida cemetery at night. Live oaks stretch their branches above the headstones. Spanish moss hangs motionless beneath them, and somewhere among the graves is the chair. Their flashlight eventually catches something red, brick. They walk closer. There it is, a simple graveside bench weathered by years of Florida rain and heat. One friend laughs. "That's it?" The others laugh too, because he's right. It's just a chair. And somehow, that makes it worse. The friend carrying the beer places it carefully on the brick seat. The can makes a tiny metallic sound as it touches the surface. Clink. In the silence of the cemetery, it sounds surprisingly loud. They decide to wait. 11:57, 11:58, 11:59. One friend keeps filming, then his phone changes. 12 o'clock. Nothing happens. Naturally, they start laughing. Well, apparently the devil's busy tonight. One of them picks up the beer. Maybe we have to actually sit down. His friend tells him not to. He grins and sits. Nothing. He stretches his arms dramatically across the back. See? I'm fine. Then, his smile disappears. Did you guys push me? They're several feet away. No! He looks beside himself. Nothing is there. Seriously, stop! His friends aren't laughing anymore, because they can see it too. His jacket is being pulled slightly toward the empty half of the chair, as though the cushion beneath him isn't the only place supporting weight. Except, there is no cushion. It's solid brick. Then he whispers, "It's cold." Not the air, the chair. The brick underneath his hand has suddenly become ice cold. He stands immediately. And that's when the phone recording begins picking up something none of them hear at the time. On the recording, their voices are clear. Their nervous laughter, their footsteps, the rustling leaves. Then, just after their friend says, "It's cold," there's another voice, low, almost buried beneath the sound of the wind. Only 2 words, "Sit down." But none of them hear it, not yet. They've had enough. They leave the unopened beer sitting in the chair and head back toward the car. Halfway across the cemetery, crack! A branch snaps somewhere behind them. They stop. Another sound, crunch, a footstep, then another, slow, measured, coming from the direction of the chair. Nobody turns around. Their pace gets faster. The footsteps do too. And then, they stop. Immediately behind them, the 3 friends run. Curiosity wins, because of course it does. In daylight, everything feels ridiculous again. Birds are singing. Cars can be heard in the distance. The terrifying cemetery from the night before looks completely ordinary. They walk back toward the chair. The beer is still there. One friend laughs. "Told you!" Then he picks it up and stops. The can is empty. No obvious spill around it. And depending on which version of this old legend you're hearing, that's exactly what people say happens. But that's not what sends them running back to the car. It's the recording. That afternoon, they finally watch the footage. They laugh at themselves at first, until they reach midnight. Their friend sits down. He asks, "Did you guys push me?" Nothing appears beside him. Then, "It's cold." They turn the volume higher. Static, wind, and underneath it, a man's voice. "Sit down." Nobody speaks. They replay it. Again. "Sit down." Again. "Sit down." The friend who had sat in the chair closes the video. He never goes back. Maybe the devil's chair is nothing more than an old brick bench surrounded by a very good story. But if you ever visit Cassadaga, I'll let you decide where you'd rather stand. Our final stop tonight takes us to a lonely stretch of road in central Florida, a road connecting the communities of Chuliota and Geneva. During the day, there's nothing particularly frightening about Snow Hill Road. Trees, wetlands, the dark waters of the Econlocache River. But for more than half a century, people have come here looking for something, a light, one that appears where no light should be. Picture Central Florida decades ago, long before development transformed so much of the area. At night, Snow Hill Road could become extraordinarily dark. Trees crowded both sides, wetlands stretched beyond them. There were places where the only illumination came from your headlights. And somewhere near the river, people began telling stories. A light would appear in the distance. At first, nothing unusual, probably another car. Except, sometimes the light didn't behave like one. It seemed to float. Sometimes it appeared bluish, and sometimes it simply vanished. Local teenagers eventually began doing what teenagers have apparently been genetically programmed to do throughout human history: go directly toward the terrifying thing adults told them about. By the 1960s, seeking out the Oviedo lights had become part of the local lore. The story I'm about to tell is a dramatization inspired by those reports and the folklore surrounding Snow Hill Road. Four teenagers pile into an old car shortly before midnight. They've heard the stories their entire lives. Tonight, they're finally going looking. At first, it's hilarious. Windows down, radio playing, someone brought snacks. One of them keeps pretending to see something just to scare everyone else. Then they reach the bridge. The driver turns off the radio. Suddenly, nobody feels like joking. The windows go up. They wait. 5 minutes, nothing. 10, nothing. One girl finally laughs. "I told you this was stupid." The driver starts the engine. That's when the passenger whispers, "Wait!" Far down Snow Hill Road, something has appeared. Tiny, white. Someone says, "Car." They're relieved, until another friend asks, "Then why isn't it lighting up the road?" Nobody answers. The light grows brighter, but the trees around it remain completely dark. No headlights sweeping across branches, no reflection on the pavement, just one concentrated point of light coming closer. The driver starts the car. "Okay, we've seen it, let's go." They drive. The light follows. 30 miles per hour, still there. 40, still there. 50. The passenger keeps staring through the rear window. "It's getting closer." The driver presses harder. The road twists through the trees, but the light doesn't seem to take the curves normally. It simply moves. One moment behind them, then seemingly beside them through the trees, then behind them again. No engine, no second set of headlights, just that light. They approach the river crossing and suddenly, the light disappears. Everyone starts shouting at once. The driver refuses to stop. Then the girl in the passenger seat goes silent. She's staring ahead. "Guys!" Everyone looks. The light is now in front of them, on the opposite side of the bridge. Nobody saw it pass. Nobody saw another vehicle. It simply isn't behind them anymore. It's waiting ahead. The driver slams on the brakes. For several seconds, nothing moves. Car on one side, light on the other. Then, the light slowly drifts sideways, off the road, toward the trees. One friend whispers, "What the hell is that?" Another reaches for the door handle. "I'm going to look." 3 voices immediately, "No!" He stays inside. Good survival instincts finally entered the vehicle. The light moves deeper between the trees. Once, twice, then, gone. Nobody speaks. The driver turns the car around. They don't stop again. But several minutes later, the passenger looks through the rear window. Nothing. She turns forward, then freezes. Far ahead, another light has appeared. She doesn't tell the others. Stories of the Oviedo lights have circulated around Snow Hill Road for approximately 60 years. The exact descriptions vary, as folklore tends to do, and so do the explanations. In 1963, 17-year-old Norbert Hyman was involved in a crash near the bridge. Friends attempted to get him to the hospital, but Hyman died. Local historian Jason Byrne has suggested the tragedy may have helped inspire the developing legend, but there's no evidence proving a connection between his death and the mysterious lights. Maybe the Oviedo lights are nothing more than headlights distorted by darkness and distance. Maybe they're a rare phenomenon rising from Florida's wetlands. Maybe decades of teenagers frightened themselves on an old road and passed the story to the next generation. Or maybe there's a reason the legend survived for more than 60 years. Either way, if you're driving an empty Florida road late at night and a light appears somewhere it shouldn't, I'd probably keep driving. And with that, our journey through the darker side of Florida comes to an end. Tonight we traveled deep into the Everglades in search of the legendary Skunk Ape, walked across Bellamy Bridge with a woman who may never have left, climbed the haunted steps of the St. Augustine Lighthouse, took a seat beside one of Florida's strangest cemetery legends, and followed mysterious lights down a lonely road in Oviedo. Some of these legends grew from real tragedies. Others have been passed from one storyteller to another for generations. And somewhere along the way, history becomes folklore. Folklore becomes legend. And sometimes, nobody remembers exactly where the truth ended. But our journey across haunted America has only just begun. Come back next week, because we're heading west to Louisiana, a land of dark bayous, Spanish moss, centuries-old cemeteries, voodoo legends, and something said to wander the swamps beneath a full moon: the Rougarou. So, if you enjoyed tonight's journey, subscribe and join me as we uncover the legends hiding in all 50 states. And tell me in the comments, which Florida legend would have you running the fastest? Until next time, keep the coffee warm, stay curious, and remember, every place has a story. We just have to find it. Good night.